She worked until her hands bled. She smiled when people treated her like dirt. She did everything right, and still, the world made her feel invisible. Then came the slap heard around the world. One moment of cruelty. One public humiliation. 50 witnesses with their phones out, recording what they thought would be her complete destruction. But what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Not the billionaire. Not the cameras. Not even Sarah herself. This is the true story of how one woman's worst night became her greatest victory. And I promise you, by the end, you'll never look at a struggling person the same way again. Let me take you to Paris, to a moment that changed everything. Welcome to Reality Untold Stories. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Section 1. The Invisible Woman, 1,000 Words. Let me tell you about Sarah Chen. 25 years old, but her eyes told a different story. They were tired eyes. Ancient eyes. The kind of eyes you get when you've been fighting your whole life just to survive. Every morning, Sarah woke up in a cramped apartment in the 20th arrondissement of Paris. The cheap part of the city, where tourists never go. Where the Eiffel Tower is just a distant dream through dirty windows. Her apartment was so small you could touch both walls if you stretched your arms out. The heating barely worked in winter. The neighbors were loud. But it was home. More importantly, it was where her father lived. Her father, Antoine, used to be a chef. One of those men who could make magic with simple ingredients. But then came the stroke. 3 years ago, right in the middle of dinner service. One moment he was cooking, the next he was on the floor, his entire left side paralyzed. The medical bills buried them. The rehabilitation costs crushed them. And Sarah, barely 22 at the time, became the only thing standing between her father and complete disaster. She worked at Le Jardin d'Or, the Golden Garden, one of Paris's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where a single meal costs more than most people earn in a week. Where celebrities came to be photographed. Where the wealthy came to prove they had taste. Where the napkins were made of Egyptian cotton and the silverware was actual silver. For 4 years, Sarah had walked those floors. Smiled at people who never really saw her. Served people who treated her like a piece of furniture you use and forget. She endured it all because every euro she earned bought her father another month of medicine, another session of physical therapy, another small hope that maybe, just maybe, he might recover enough to cook again. The staff at Le Jardin d'Or weren't treated well. The head manager, a man named Francois, ruled the place like a dictator. He was the kind of person who thought cruelty was the same as strength. He yelled. He threatened. He made people feel worthless because somewhere deep inside, he felt worthless too. But Sarah never complained. She couldn't afford to. Her younger brother, Lucas, was studying engineering at university. Her father needed constant care. She was the only one holding their small family together. So she swallowed her pride. She ignored the exhaustion that made her bones ache. She kept moving forward because stopping meant everything would fall apart. On this particular evening, the restaurant buzzed with nervous energy. Francois had gathered the staff that afternoon, his face red with excitement and anxiety. Listen carefully, he'd barked. Tonight we're serving Julien Baptiste. Yes, the Julien Baptiste. The pharmaceutical genius. The billionaire. He's bringing his girlfriend. If anything goes wrong, if anyone makes a mistake, you're all finished. Do you understand me? Everyone nodded. They understood. Julien Baptiste was a legend in France. A man who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. A man whose company had developed treatments that saved millions of lives. A man so wealthy that he could buy restaurants like Le Jardin d'Or with the change in his pocket. Sarah didn't care about the fame. She cared about the tip. A table like that could mean 6 months of her father's medication. It could mean not having to choose between electricity and food. It could mean her brother wouldn't have to drop out of university. When Julien Baptiste walked through those doors, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He was tall, maybe 35, with dark hair starting to gray at the temples and eyes that looked exhausted. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than Sarah's yearly rent. But it was the woman on his arm who commanded all the attention. Her name was Isabel Moreau. She moved like she owned the air around her. Her dress sparkled under the chandeliers, covered in crystals that caught the light with every step. Her blonde hair was pulled back, so tight it looked painful. And her face, beautiful, yes, but cold, like a porcelain doll that might shatter if you touched it wrong. Sarah was assigned to their table. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the menus. This was it. The biggest table of her career. The tip that could change everything. She took a deep breath and walked over. "Good evening," Sarah said softly, her voice warm despite the fear in her chest. "Welcome to Le Jardin d'Or. My name is Sarah, and I'll be—" "We need champagne," Isabel interrupted, not even looking up from her phone. "Dom Perignon. The 2008. And make sure it's properly chilled. Last time we were here, it was practically warm." "Of course, madam," Sarah replied. She glanced at Julian, who gave her a tired nod. There was something in his eyes. Something that looked almost like an apology. The next hour was torture. Isabel sent back her appetizer 4 times. The soup was too hot. Then too cold. Then it had too much salt. Then not enough. She complained about everything. The lighting was wrong. The music was too loud. The temperature was too cold. Nothing was good enough. Through it all, Sarah smiled. She apologized. She fixed every problem because that's what invisible people do. They make everything work while nobody notices. Julian barely spoke. He drank his wine and stared out the window at the lights of Paris. He looked like a man trapped in a beautiful cage. At one point, Sarah brought fresh bread to the table. As she set it down, Julian looked up at her. Really looked at her. For just a moment, their eyes met, and Sarah saw something flicker across his face. Recognition? Confusion? She couldn't tell. Then it was gone, and he looked away. Isabel snapped her fingers. Actually snapped them like Sarah was a dog. "Water. Now. And this time, make sure there are exactly 3 ice cubes. Not 2. Not 4. 3. Sarah's cheeks burned with humiliation, but she nodded. "Right away, madam." As she walked back to the service station, her phone buzzed. A text from Lucas. "Papa's breathing is bad tonight. Hospital said we need new prescription tomorrow. 400 euros. Do you have it?" Sarah's heart sank. 400 euros. She'd been saving for weeks, but she was still short. She typed back quickly. "I'll get it. Don't worry." She had no idea how, but she'd figure it out. She always did. Because that's what invisible people do. They carry weights nobody else can see. Little did Sarah know, in just a few minutes, everything was about to explode. The main course arrived, and Sarah carried the plates with the practiced grace of someone who'd done this thousands of times. Isabel had ordered the most expensive item on the menu, lobster thermidor with truffle butter, prepared with ingredients that cost more per gram than gold. Sarah set the plate down gently. "Your lobster, madam. Please be careful, the plate is very hot." Isabel didn't even acknowledge her. She was too busy photographing her food from every possible angle. Click, click, click. She made Sarah stand there, holding a small lamp to get better lighting while other diners stared. "Move to the left," Isabel commanded. "No, my left." "Don't you know left from right?" "My apologies," Sarah whispered, shifting position. After what felt like an eternity, Isabel put down her phone. She took one bite of the lobster and immediately pushed the plate away. "This is unacceptable," Isabel announced loudly. Everyone in nearby tables turned to look. "This lobster is overcooked. The sauce is too heavy. Take it back and tell your chef he should be ashamed." Sarah's heart sank. The lobster looked perfect. But that didn't matter. "Of course, madam. I'll speak with the chef immediately." "I don't want you to speak with anyone." Isabel's voice rose. "I want you to understand something. Do you know who I am? Do you know who we are?" She gestured dramatically at Julian, who was rubbing his temples. "Yes, madam," Sarah said quietly. "You understand nothing," Isabel snapped. "People like you will never understand people like us. You're here to serve. That's all you're good for." So serve properly or find another job where you can be mediocre. The words hit Sarah like punches. Around them, the restaurant had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Julian finally spoke, his voice low. Isabel, that's enough. She's just doing her job. Don't you dare defend the help. Isabel hissed at him. You're always too soft. That's your problem. Sarah stood there frozen. She wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open up and swallow her. But she had a job to do. A father who needed medicine. A brother counting on her. I'll get you something else, Sarah managed. Perhaps I don't want something else, Isabel said coldly. I want wine. That bottle. She pointed at the most expensive red wine on the menu. Pour it. And don't mess it up. Sarah nodded and went to retrieve the bottle. It was worth 3,000 euros. More than 8 months of her father's medication. The thought made her dizzy. She approached the table carefully. Julian was staring out the window again, looking miserable. Isabel was on her phone, probably complaining to her followers. Sarah began to pour the wine into Isabel's glass. Slowly, carefully. The dark red liquid flowed smoothly. Then Isabel moved. Without warning, without even looking, Isabel flung her arm up in a dramatic gesture. I just don't understand why you won't buy me that apartment in Monaco, Julian. It's not like you can't afford. Her arm hit Sarah's wrist hard. Everything happened in slow motion. The bottle tipped. The wine arced through the air like a crimson wave. And it splashed directly across Isabel's chest, soaking into her crystal-covered dress. The entire restaurant went silent. Not polite quiet. This was the silence before a storm. Sarah stood frozen, the nearly empty bottle still in her hand. Her mind was screaming. The dress. The job. The medicine. Everything flashed before her eyes. I'm so sorry, Sarah gasped, reaching for a napkin. It was an accident, I didn't mean. Don't touch me. Isabel's scream could have shattered glass. She leapt up, knocking her chair backward. You stupid, clumsy idiot. Do you have any idea what you've done? I'm so sorry, Sarah repeated, tears forming. You moved your arm, Are you blaming me? Isabel's face twisted with rage. She stepped closer, invading Sarah's space. You spill wine on my Valentino dress, and you have the audacity to blame me? No, I just meant, Sarah's voice cracked. I don't care what you meant. Isabel shrieked. This dress cost 30,000 euros. 30,000. You probably don't earn that in a year. Sarah stood there trembling. She could feel every eye on her. She could see Francois at the kitchen door, his face pale with fury. She was going to be fired. Her father's medicine. Lucas's university. The rent. Everything was about to collapse. Please, Sarah whispered. I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the cleaning aisle. You'll pay? Isabel laughed, a cruel sound. With what? Your pathetic tips? You're nothing. Nothing. Just a stupid little waitress who's too incompetent to even pour wine properly. Julian stood up. Isabel, stop it. That's enough. No, it's not enough. Isabel spun toward him. I want her fired. I want her arrested. Then she turned back to Sarah. Her hand rose up. And before anyone could react, before Sarah could even blink, Isabel's palm connected with Sarah's face. Slap. The sound echoed through Le Jardin door like a gunshot. Sarah's head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across her cheek. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her face. The restaurant wasn't just silent anymore. It was frozen. Time itself seemed to stop. Sarah stood there, tears streaming down her face, holding her burning cheek. She waited for Francois to fire her. She waited for security. She waited for her world to end. But the first person to move wasn't Francois. It wasn't security. It was Julian Baptiste. And what he did next would change everything. Julian moved with deliberate slowness. He set down his wine glass with such careful precision that it made no sound against the white tablecloth. Then he stood up, all 6 feet of him, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He didn't look at Isabel. Not yet. First, he looked at Sarah. Really looked at her. His eyes scanned her face, the red handprint forming on her pale cheek, the tears streaming down, the way she was trembling but still trying to stand tall, still trying to maintain some dignity even as her world collapsed. Then Julian reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a white handkerchief, pressed and perfect. He held it out to Sarah. "Are you all right?" His voice was soft, but it carried across the silent restaurant. Sarah stared at the handkerchief, confused. Was this some kind of trick? Some kind of test? She took it with shaking fingers. I'm fine, sir. I'm so sorry about the dress. I'll pay for it somehow. I promise. Stop apologizing, Julian said firmly. He turned to face Isabel. You need to leave. Isabel's mouth fell open. What? What did you just say to me? I said you need to leave, Julian repeated, his voice louder now. This is over. We're over. The restaurant erupted in whispers. Phones came out of pockets and purses. This was about to be. Julian opened the box. It was empty. Isabel's face fell. I don't understand. I returned the ring 4 days ago, Julian said coldly. I was planning to end this tonight. Privately. Quietly. I was going to be a gentleman about it. But after what you just did, he gestured toward Sarah. You don't deserve a gentleman. You can't break up with me. Isabel's voice rose to a shriek. The wedding is in 2 months. The invitations are sent. Do you know how much my family spent on the venue? Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Julian said, his voice like ice. I've known for months. I've watched you belittle waiters, scream at drivers, mock my assistants. I told myself you were just stressed. That planning a wedding was hard. But tonight, you crossed a line. You hit someone. You assaulted someone who was just trying to do her job. He looked back at Sarah, who was still standing there in shock, clutching the handkerchief to her burning cheek. What's your full name? He asked her gently. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Sarah. Sarah Chun. Julian froze. His eyes widened. He stepped closer, studying her face more carefully, looking past the tears, past the exhaustion, past the pain. Chun, he repeated slowly. Sarah Chun. From École Secondaire Voltaire? Sarah blinked, confused. Yes, but how did you? Oh my God, Julian breathed. A strange expression crossed his face. Recognition mixed with disbelief. Shame mixed with wonder. Sarah, it's me. Jules. Jules Baptiste from school. Sarah stared at him. Jules Baptiste. The name hit her like a wave crashing over her head. The quiet boy who used to sit alone in the cafeteria. The one who wore the same worn-out jacket every day. The one the other kids picked on because his mother cleaned office buildings at night, and he came to school smelling like cleaning chemicals. The one Sarah had shared her lunch with every day for 2 years. Jules? Sarah whispered. Little Jules Baptiste? But you didn't have money. You were poor. Julian finished, a sad smile on his face. Yes. I barely had anything. Until you. The restaurant was completely silent now. Even Isabel had stopped shrieking, staring between them in confusion and growing horror. Julian turned to address the entire room. His voice carried authority now, the voice of a man who'd built an empire. This woman, he pointed at Sarah, is the reason I'm standing here today. When I was 15 years old, I was nobody. Less than nobody. I was the poor kid. The one everyone ignored. I went to school hungry most days because my mother was working 3 jobs just to keep us alive. He looked at Sarah, his eyes shining with emotion. But Sarah saw me. She didn't just see me, she sat with me. She shared her food with me, even though her own family didn't have much. When the teacher accused me of cheating on my exams because no poor kid could score that high, Sarah marched into the principal's office and fought for me. She got me into the advanced science program. She tutored me for free. She believed in me when nobody else did. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. She'd forgotten. Or maybe she'd never realized how much those small acts of kindness had meant. I spent 8 years looking for you, Julian continued. After my first pharmaceutical patent sold, I hired investigators. But you'd moved. I thought I'd lost you forever. And then tonight I walk into this restaurant and there you are, serving people who treat you like dirt, getting abused by someone like her." He gestured dismissively at Isabel. He turned back to Isabel, his face hardening. "You hit the woman who saved my life. The woman who made me who I am. So yes, Isabel, we're done. Security will escort you out. And if you even think about pressing charges or causing trouble, I have 60 witnesses who just watched you assault someone, including 30 people with their phones out." Isabel looked around wildly. She saw all the phones recording. She saw the expressions on people's faces, not sympathy but disgust. Her face crumbled. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "My family will destroy you. My father has connections. He has power." "Your father," Julian interrupted calmly, "is currently being investigated for insurance fraud. The authorities received an anonymous tip about 6 hours ago. Something about falsified clinical trial data and bribing government officials. I imagine he has bigger problems right now than your broken engagement." Isabel's face went white. Without another word, security guards appeared. They escorted her toward the exit, her protests fading as the door closed behind her. Julian turned back to Sarah. The entire restaurant was still watching, but he didn't seem to care. "Sarah," he said softly, "take off the apron." "What?" Sarah's voice shook. Am I fired?" "No." Julian smiled. "You're promoted." The manager's office of Le Jardin d'Or was nothing like the restaurant below. While the dining room was all crystal and elegance, up here it was dark wood and leather. It smelled like expensive cigars and secrets that never left the room. Sarah sat in one of the leather chairs, still in shock. Her cheek still burned where Isabel had hit her. The handkerchief Julian had given her was clutched in her hands, now stained with her tears and a bit of blood from where Isabel's ring had cut her. Julian sat across from her. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves. He looked more human now, less like the billionaire from magazines and more like the boy she used to know. "I don't understand what's happening," Sarah said quietly. "Promoted? Julian, I can't be promoted. I'm a waitress. I don't have qualifications. I don't have management experience. I barely finished secondary school because I had to work to help my family." Julian leaned forward. "Sarah, do you know why I was looking for you all these years?" She shook her head. "Because I owed you a debt," he said simply. "Not a financial debt. Something bigger. You gave me hope when I had none. You made me believe I could be more than the poor kid everyone pitied. Every success I've had, every company I've built, it all started with you believing in me." "I was just being kind," Sarah whispered. "Anyone would have done the same." "But they didn't," Julian said, his voice hard. "Nobody else did. Everyone else looked at me and saw nothing. You looked at me and saw potential." He stood up and walked to the window, overlooking the restaurant below. "Do you know what I've built, Sarah? Really built?" "You created Medicure," Sarah said. "The pharmaceutical company. You developed treatments for rare diseases. You saved lives." "I created an empire," Julian corrected. "Medicure is worth 6 billion euros. I own 12 other companies. I have investments in everything from biotechnology to real estate to restaurants." He turned to look at her. "Including this one. As of 20 minutes ago, I bought Le Jardin d'Or." Sarah's eyes widened. "You bought the restaurant? Just now? While we were sitting here?" "I made one phone call," Julian said. "The owner has been trying to sell for months. He was thrilled to accept my offer. The paperwork will take a few days, but it's done." He smiled. "And my first act as owner is to fire Francois." "Francois?" Sarah repeated. "Your manager," Julian said. "Or rather, your former manager. He's been stealing from this place for years. I had my people do a quick audit while we've been talking. He's been inflating costs, taking kickbacks from suppliers, skimming off the top." "Julian, I can't." "Yes, you can," he interrupted. "Sarah, you know this place better than anyone. You know what the customers want. You know which suppliers are reliable and which ones are scams. You know which staff members actually work and which ones hide in the back smoking cigarettes." But I don't know how to run a business, Sarah protested. I don't know about budgets and accounting and I have accountants who know about budgets, Julian said. I have advisors who can teach you anything you need to learn. What I don't have is someone I trust. Someone with integrity. Someone who won't steal from me or lie to me. He knelt down in front of her chair, looking up into her eyes. I trust you, Sarah. I trusted you when I was 15. I trust you now. Sarah felt tears welling up again. My father, she whispered. Julian, my father is sick. He needs medicine tomorrow. I was counting on tonight's tips to pay for it. If I take time off to learn how to run this place. Julian pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. Dr. Laurent, it's Julian Baptiste. Yes, I know it's late. I need you to make a house call tonight. He looked at Sarah. What's your address? Sarah gave him the address of their tiny apartment, her voice shaking. Yes, that's the one, Julian said into the phone. Patient name is Antoine Chun, Sarah whispered. He had a stroke 3 years ago. He has limited mobility and respiratory issues. Antoine Chun. Stroke victim with respiratory complications. Julian repeated. I want a full examination. I want the best treatment plan available. Cost is not a factor. Bill everything to my personal account. You'll be there in 30 minutes? Excellent. He hung up. Sarah was sobbing now. Not from sadness. From relief. From overwhelming, crushing relief. Dr. Laurent is the best neurologist in Paris, Julian said gently. He'll take care of your father. And Sarah, I'm not just paying for tomorrow's medicine. I'm covering all his medical expenses. Everything. For as long as he needs. I can't let you do that, Sarah protested weakly. It's too much. I can't accept. It's not charity, Julian said firmly. It's a signing bonus. You're going to work hard. You're going to rebuild this restaurant. You're going to make it better than it's ever been. And in return, you get a proper salary, benefits, and the security to know your family is taken care of. He smiled. Besides, you shared your lunch with me for 2 years. I think I can cover some medical bills. Sarah laughed through her tears. It was a broken, exhausted sound, but it was genuine. There's something else you need to know, Julian said, his expression turning serious. Something about why Francois and Isabelle were really connected. Sarah wiped her eyes. What do you mean? Francois wasn't just stealing from the restaurant, Julian explained. He was working with Isabelle's father. They were using this place to launder money through fake supplier contracts. Isabelle knew. That's why she was so confident tonight. She thought she could do anything because her family essentially owned this place through Francois. How much? Sarah asked. About €3 million over the past 4 years, Julian said grimly. Sarah felt sick. What happens now? Now. Julian smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. We fix it. Together. For months later, Sarah stood in front of the restaurant and barely recognized it. The old, pretentious sign was gone. In its place was something simpler, more welcoming. La Table Avert, the open table. It was opening night of the newly renovated restaurant. The lines stretched around the block. Not because people wanted to see where a viral video happened, but because word had spread about something special happening here. Sarah wore a simple black dress and comfortable shoes. Her choice, not some ridiculous uniform. Her hair was pulled back simply, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked professional, but real. Human. Lucas stood beside her, beaming with pride. Their father was there too, in a wheelchair but smiling. Dr. Laurent's treatment had worked wonders. He still couldn't walk well, but he was alive. Improving. He'd even started consulting on the menu, advising the new head chef from his wheelchair. Are you nervous? Lucas asked. Sarah smiled. Terrified. You're going to be brilliant, her father said, his speech still slightly slurred but understandable. You've always been brilliant, ma petite. The doors opened. The first customers filed in, and Sarah felt her heart soar. This was really happening. The restaurant looked completely different. Gone were the stuffy velvet ropes and pretentious gold accents. The new design was warm, welcoming. Wooden tables. Soft lighting. Real art from local artists on the walls. Not expensive pieces chosen by some designer who'd never eaten here. But the biggest change was the staff. They moved with confidence now. They smiled real smiles. They weren't terrified anymore. Sarah had kept most of the original team, the ones who'd been good at their jobs, but beaten down by Francois's cruelty. She'd let go of the ones who'd been lazy or cruel to others. And she'd hired new people. People like her. Single parents working 2 jobs. Young people trying to pay for university. Immigrants building new lives. Refugees starting over. She paid them properly. Gave them health care. Treated them like human beings. Revolutionary concepts in the restaurant industry. The head chef, a woman named Amara who'd been stuck as a sous chef under Francois, had completely redesigned the menu. No more pretentious French cuisine that nobody really wanted. Now they served food that actually tasted good. Comfort food elevated. Simple ingredients done perfectly. As Sarah walked through the dining room, she saw Julian sitting at a corner table. He caught her eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. He'd been true to his word. He owned the building and covered the major expenses, but he let Sarah run everything. He never interfered, never micromanaged. He trusted her. That trust had terrified her at first. She'd spent 4 months working 18-hour days, learning everything. How to read financial statements. How to negotiate with suppliers. How to handle difficult customers without being walked over. How to lead a team without being a tyrant. She'd made mistakes. Lots of them. But Julian had been patient. Every successful person has failed more times than unsuccessful people have tried, he told her once. The difference is we keep going. Now, on opening night, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Real, genuine pride. A server approached her. Thomas, a former construction worker who'd been laid off and needed a fresh start. Sarah, table 12 is asking for you. Sarah walked over. An elderly couple sat there, both dressed nicely, but not expensively. They reminded her of her grandparents. Is everything all right? Sarah asked warmly. The woman dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. We just wanted to thank you. We read about what you've done here. We're both retired teachers. We could never afford places like this used to be, but tonight we could. And the food. She smiled. The food was perfect. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Thank you. That means everything. As the night went on, Sarah realized something profound. She'd spent years being invisible, serving people who looked through her, accepting cruelty because choice. She believed the lie that people like her, struggling people, poor people, had to accept whatever scraps were thrown their way. But that was wrong. She had value. She had dignity. She had skills and intelligence and worth. She'd always had them. The only thing that had changed was that now she believed it too. Around 10 p.m., there was a commotion at the door. Sarah's security guard approached her quietly. Someone's trying to get in. Says she used to know you. Isabel Moreau. Sarah's blood ran cold. She hadn't seen Isabel since that night. She knew the woman had been arrested briefly, though her family's lawyers had gotten her out. The trial for the money laundering scheme was still ongoing. Should I turn her away? The guard asked. Sarah thought about it. Part of her wanted to say yes. Wanted to make Isabel feel what it felt like to be rejected. Humiliated. But that would make her no better than Isabel had been. No, Sarah said quietly. Let her in. Treat her like any other customer. Isabel entered looking different. Her designer clothes were still expensive, but less showy. Her makeup was lighter. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. She walked up to Sarah, her eyes downcast. I know I have no right to be here. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. What I did was unforgivable. Sarah studied her face. She looked for signs of manipulation. But all she saw was a broken woman who'd lost everything. Thank you for the apology, Sarah said calmly. I accept it. Isabel's eyes widened. You do? Yes. Because I'm not going to carry anger around anymore. I'm not going to let what you did define me. I'm free of you, Isabel. Completely free. Isabel nodded slowly. She turned to leave. Isabel, Sarah called out. She turned back. If you want to stay for dinner, you can. Just like anyone else. No special treatment. But you're welcome here. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. She nodded and quietly took a seat at a small table in the back. Later, as Sarah was closing up, Julian approached her. You didn't have to let her stay. I know, Sarah said. But that's the point of this place. La table avert, the open table. Everyone's welcome. Rich, poor, kind, struggling. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. Everyone deserves to be seen. Julian smiled. You're going to change more than just this restaurant, Sarah. You're going to change how people think. Sarah looked around at her restaurant, at her staff laughing together, at her father and brother waiting to walk home with her, at the success she'd built not from luck, but from refusing to give up. Maybe, she said, but for now, I'm just happy to have changed my own life. As they locked up and stepped into the cool Paris night, Sarah felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Real, genuine peace. She wasn't invisible anymore. She never had been, really.
Choice.
She'd just been waiting for the world to catch up to what people like her, struggling people, down, poor people, every person has whatever scraps were thrown their way. But that was wrong. She had value. She had dignity. She had skills and intelligence and worth. She'd always had them. The only thing that had changed was that now she believed it too. Around 10 p.m., there was a commotion at the door. Sarah's security guard approached her quietly. Someone's trying to get in. Says she used to know you. Isabel Moreau. Sarah's blood ran cold. She hadn't seen Isabel since that night. She knew the woman had been arrested briefly, though her family's lawyers had gotten her out. The trial for the money laundering scheme was still ongoing. Should I turn her away? The guard asked. Sarah thought about it. Part of her wanted to say yes. Wanted to make Isabel feel what it felt like to be rejected. Humiliated. But that would make her no better than Isabel had been. No, Sarah said quietly. Let her in. Treat her like any other customer. Isabel entered looking different. Her designer clothes were still expensive, but less showy. Her makeup was lighter. She looked smaller somehow. Diminished. She walked up to Sarah, her eyes downcast. I know I have no right to be here. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. What I did was unforgivable. Sarah studied her face. She looked for signs of manipulation. But all she saw was a broken woman who'd lost everything. Thank you for the apology, Sarah said calmly. I accept it. Isabel's eyes widened. You do? Yes. Because I'm not going to carry anger around anymore. I'm not going to let what you did define me. I'm free of you, Isabel. Completely free. Isabel nodded slowly. She turned to leave. Isabel, Sarah called out. She turned back. If you want to stay for dinner, you can. Just like anyone else. No special treatment. But you're welcome here. Isabel's eyes filled with tears. She nodded and quietly took a seat at a small table in the back. Later, as Sarah was closing up, Julian approached her. You didn't have to let her stay. I know, Sarah said. But that's the point of this place. La table avert, the open table. Everyone's welcome. Rich, poor, kind, struggling. Everyone deserves a seat at the table. Everyone deserves to be seen. Julian smiled. You're going to change more than just this restaurant, Sarah. You're going to change how people think. Sarah looked around at her restaurant, at her staff laughing together, at her father and brother waiting to walk home with her, at the success she'd built not from luck, but from refusing to give up. Maybe, she said, but for now, I'm just happy to have changed my own life. As they locked up and stepped into the cool Paris night, Sarah felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Real, genuine peace. She wasn't invisible anymore. She never had been, really. She'd just been waiting for the world to catch up to what she'd always known deep down. That every person has value.